The season opens with a meeting between the shogun and members of the Yamada Asa-Emon clan, where Jika reappears after managing to return from the realm of the immortals, something considered virtually impossible due to the currents that trapped anyone who tried to escape. Although he avoids explaining how he got out, his testimony confirms that Chobe murdered one of the Asa-Emon and that the situation on the island is far more serious than expected. With no reports from Aizen, the shogunate decides to send a new expedition, with Shugen, deeply concerned about his comrade. As proof of the danger, Jika presents a creature brought back from the island, confirmed to be dead yet bearing strange characteristics, reintroducing the concept of Tao. From there, the Tensen take center stage and delve deeper into its origins, explaining that Tao is equivalent to life itself and that abusing it ultimately leads to self-destruction. It is revealed they train this power in a systematic and extreme way, even fusing with or killing others to obtain greater amounts of Tao. Meanwhile, Sagiri, Shion, Yuzuriha, and Mei debate whether to withdraw, fully aware that the shogunate will not accept a return without results. Tension rises when Gabimaru is shown suffering from severe memory loss. He no longer remembers his wife or his purpose, and Mei detects an unsettling void in his mind, possibly caused by an illusory technique. The episode reaches its most intense moment with the reunion between Gabimaru and Chubi, who has already begun transforming into a monster dominated by an overwhelming Tao. The fight is brutal and bloody, marked by Chubi's inhuman regeneration and Gabimaru's emotional emptiness as he fights without memories or attachment. At the same time, Toma faces Shion, displaying overwhelming strength while evolving mid-battle. Finally, Gabimaru resorts to his fire monk technique, enveloping himself in flames to confront Chubi, who undergoes an even further transformation, losing all traces of his human appearance. The episode ends by making it clear that Chubi has crossed an irreversible line, and that Tao, far from being merely a source of power, is also a path to destruction. Gabimaru continues the fight against Chobi using Burning Bridge, but the attack has no effect. Chobi, now transformed and dominated by an overflowing Tao, counterattacks ferociously with his tentacles, gradually overwhelming Gabimaru's resistance. Cornered, Gabimaru resorts to the ascetic blaze technique to create some distance. During a brief respite, Chobi's mental state is shown as he begins to realize that he is losing his identity and sanity. Despite this, Chobi resumes his assault. Tenza questions why Gabimaru is not using his Tao, and Mei explains that he has forgotten how, while his opponent is overflowing with power. Gabimaru acknowledges that he has almost no chance of winning, and that he has even lost the sense of his mission, yet he is still willing to die fighting. The memory of his wife awakens one final offensive impulse, leading Fuchi to point out that both fighters have lost their reason. Unable to endure the situation, Toma intervenes to help his brother, admitting that he does not want Chobi to bear the suffering alone. Confused, Chobi unintentionally wounds Toma. Taking advantage of the chaos, Gabimaru attempts to finish off both brothers, but Mei causes the ground to collapse. Chobi shields Toma with his own body and falls into the abyss, promising that he will return. After the battle, Mei suddenly shows signs of physical growth, astonishing everyone. The story then shifts to Sagiri's group, who plan to find Gabimaru to increase their chances of survival. Although Yuzuriha wishes to leave the island, they follow the clues and reunite with the other group. It is confirmed that only 8 survivors remain and that the monsters of the valley floor have been eliminated. Gabimaru, severely injured and with his Tao completely depleted, awakens without his memories and attacks Sagiri, declaring himself to be Gabimaru, the Hollow. She explains that his soul is damaged and manages to restrain him. Through physical contact with Sagiri, his Tao begins to recover, allowing him to regain consciousness. When he remembers his wife, Yui, and his desire to return to her, his power strengthens. Meanwhile, Chobei awakens after the fall, satisfied with his new power and determined to master it, even using monsters as nourishment. The story closes with the looming threat of new enemies and the certainty that the Lord Tenzin will not stop hunting them. Despite having found a relatively safe refuge, Mei's condition continues to worsen. Kofuchi claims to possess a medicine that could help her, but in exchange, he demands information about the Tenzin, reinforcing the suspicion that Mei shares their same genetics and abilities. While part of the group investigates this mystery, the rest focus on training Gabimaru, who, although he has recovered his memories, still does not fully master Tao. During the training, he realizes that he cannot match the Tenzin in Tao control, but he can take advantage of the Tao they emit to strike their vital points, thus discovering an effective way to injure them. During this temporary truce, Toma sets his pride aside and asks Tamaya to train him in swordsmanship so he can rescue his brother. As a sign of sincerity, he cuts his hair, and although Tamaya hesitates at first, she ultimately accepts. At the same time, Chobei confronts Rien, who reveals that the criminal's body has adapted to Tao, turning him into a hybrid between human and Tenzin. Although Chobei manages to defeat him by exploiting his weak point, he soon discovers that Rien can multiply, which ultimately leads to his capture. Rien shows interest in experimenting on Chobei to circulate Tao within him. Chobei agrees to submit, but demands to learn the truth about the island and Tao. It is then revealed that the island was created by Shufuku, a sorcerer who sought immortality through Tao, creating monsters in the process and giving rise to the Tenzin. Although the Tenzin are not truly immortal, they can prolong their lives thanks to an elixir called Tan, a regenerative prototype. Shufuku's true plan goes far beyond this, to turn the entire population of Japan into Tan. Meanwhile, Mei confesses that she and Rien were the first beings created by Shufuku. When she opposed Rien's methods, she was punished with the destruction of the organ that allowed her to circulate Tao, causing her body to gradually petrify whenever she uses too much energy. Realizing that Mei needs Tao to survive, Joko decides to sacrifice himself and transfer all of his energy to her. Before doing so, Mei bids him farewell by calling him Father, sealing an emotional goodbye filled with gratitude and sorrow. While the main group continues to lose members on the island, the story returns to the shogunate, where the second expedition team bound for Kototaku Island is being prepared. Among them stands out Shugen, accompanied by elite swordsmen and ninjas from Iwagakure. Tension arises when Kiyomaru, driven by his arrogance, openly threatens the ninjas. They prove their absolute loyalty to the shogunate when their leader takes his own life without hesitation, dispelling any doubts. Although it is later revealed that their true objective is to assassinate Gabimaru on direct orders from their clan. After a long journey, the new group arrives on the island and quickly faces monsters, confirming the constant danger of the place. At the same time, the protagonists deduce that reinforcements must already be on the way, which gives Sagiri hope, as she places complete trust in Shugen. His reputation is no exaggeration. Although he does not formally master Tao, he is able to perceive it and use it instinctively, allowing him to fight even without weapons. Nevertheless, Shugen also bears a blood-stained past. He's admired for his talent and leadership, yet feared for the cruel acts he committed in order to fulfill the shogunate's orders. Even so, Sagiri feels deep admiration for him, as he was her first love and the one who intervened so that she could obtain her license as a swordswoman. Despite this, Shion considers any alliance impossible, since Shugen shows no compassion toward criminals or executioners allied with them. The situation grows more serious when Shugen finds the body of his master, Ayan. Devastated, he decides to give him a proper burial even while monsters attack. As he prays, swordsmen and ninjas fight together with great efficiency. Consumed by grief and hatred, Shugen dulls his blade so that his future cuts will inflict greater pain, determined to take revenge and continue moving forward. Returning to the protagonists, the group concludes that mastering Tao is essential to face the Lord Tenzin. With no clear way off the island, they decide to advance together toward its depths in search of the elixir of life, fully aware that only by staying united will they have any real chance of surviving. With their minds finally clear, the group of swordsmen begins planning a strategy to ensure their survival and obtain the elixir of life, which is located in the Tenzin Palace. Their top priority is to infiltrate the area, avoid unnecessary battles, and escape by sea, trusting in the possible existence of a hidden life current that could allow them to leave the island despite the dangers lurking in the ocean. To achieve this, Gabimaru and Yuzuriha share their ninja techniques. Yuzuriha teaches how to dilute Tao in order to become undetectable to the Tenzin's senses, though the technique fails if the user loses their composure. Gabimaru, meanwhile, instructs the group on how to use an enemy's Tao to counterattack, subjecting them to extremely harsh training, meant to free the flow of energy throughout the body. While not everyone adapts successfully, some stand out, such as Toma, and the group gradually strengthens their trust in one another. Shion then divides the members according to the elements they wield to avoid elemental disadvantages in combat. Thanks to the information provided by Mei about the Tenzin, they establish that facing an elementally superior enemy leaves only one option: to flee. With this decision made, the group splits up, with some tasked with searching for the elixir, while others focus on securing an escape route. Mei chooses not to leave the island right away, as she wishes to speak with Rian and her master to understand why they became evil. Her words deeply affect Gabimaru, reminding him of his wife and leading him to help Mei fulfill her wish. Meanwhile, the Tenzin accept Chobei into their sect. He pretends to cooperate in order to uncover their weaknesses, and after a ritual, notices a significant increase in his abilities. In Rian's laboratory, the existence of a gigantic flower capable of stealing Tao from humans is revealed, hinting at a much larger, still unknown plan as experiments begin on Chobei's body. That same night, the group infiltrates the palace, taking advantage of the Tenzin's reduced power without solar energy, and the fact that they are usually separated. Although combat is forbidden as part of the mission, they manage to advance by using Tao as a means to see in the darkness. However, Gabimaru is intercepted by Rian, who is also capable of concealing his Tao, revealing that the infiltration had already been anticipated. After Chobei unintentionally betrays them, the group is split apart and forced to face different Tenzin, marking the failure of the plan and leaving them no choice but to fight for their lives. With no possibility of escape, Gabimaru decides to execute a plan B, fight with everything he has in order to survive. Before the confrontation begins, Ran tries to persuade Mei to return to the Tenzin. He reveals that thanks to Chobei Aza's contributions, they have perfected the elixir of immortality, which no longer transforms humans into flowers. With this breakthrough, deaths are no longer as necessary, since the main objective now is to complete the Heiki Fukusho ritual by sacrificing the remaining protagonists. However, Mei rejects the offer and declares her intention to leave the island, prompting Ran to regard her as an enemy and a future offering. The battle begins with a clear disadvantage for Gabimaru. Ran is aligned with the water element, which neutralizes his affinity with fire and vastly surpasses him in the amount of Tao he possesses. In addition, the Tenzin can manipulate inanimate matter through their energy, allowing Ran to control the sand on the battlefield and capture Mei. Gabimaru and Yuzuriha attempt to attack him together, but they discover that his skin appears impenetrable. Through his elemental perception, Gabimaru realizes that Ron is covered in a dense layer of Tao that functions as an invisible armor. As the fight intensifies, Gabimaru barely manages to endure. However, he notices a slight flaw in the flow of Ron's Tao and seizes that instant to land a direct blow to his face, shocking the Tensen by proving that a human can break through his perfect defense. At the same time, it is revealed that Ron orchestrated the ambush against the humans, seeking to have the Tensen refine their Tao through combat experience. Although wounded, Ron regenerates quickly and acknowledges Gabimaru's talent. When Mei and Yuzuriha attempt to flee, Ron unleashes his monstrous form, drastically increasing his speed and strength. Within seconds, he dominates the fight, gravely injures Yuzuriha, and leaves Gabimaru on the brink of death. Even so, Gabimaru refuses to surrender and tries to distract Ron to save his companion. Yuzuriha, setting aside her selfishness, attempts to rescue him, but Ron completely overwhelms them. Finally, after blocking a devastating attack that nearly splits him in two, Gabimaru falls gravely wounded, thinking of his wife and the promise he may never be able to fulfill. While Gabimaru fights on the brink of death, elsewhere on the island, Tamiya, Gantetsu-sai, and Fuchi face an equally desperate situation. Both must battle the Tensen Ju-fa and Tao-fa, as well as the brothers Chobei-aza and Toma-aza, who seemingly betray the humans in order to join the sect. Soon, it is revealed that the Aza brothers' supposed betrayal was a carefully calculated strategy. With a single glance, they coordinate and launch a surprise attack against the Tensen, making it clear that their true goal was never to join them. Chobei even acknowledges how much Toma has improved after training with the others, demonstrating that teamwork has significantly strengthened their abilities. This momentarily eases the pressure on Tamiya and Fuchi, but the advantage is short-lived. Ju-fa and Tao-fa quickly regenerate their wounds, making it clear that defeating them will not be easy. The battle intensifies when Tao-fa intervenes directly and displays overwhelming strength, sending Tamiya flying with a single blow. Meanwhile, Ju-fa begins to notice that Chobei and Toma fight as if they were one, making their movements difficult to anticipate. Even so, the Tensen maintain an enormous advantage thanks to their mastery of Tao, an energy that humans are only beginning to understand. Fuchi attempts to apply the teachings he received to visualize Tao, but fails, leaving him at a clear disadvantage. Tamiya, staying true to his impulsive nature, chooses to continue fighting without fully understanding it, a decision that nearly costs him his life. In the midst of the clash, it is revealed that even the Tensen question the true meaning of their pursuit of immortality, though they continue clinging to it by eliminating humans. When Fuchi is gravely injured while protecting Tamiya, he makes it clear that beyond his duty as an executioner, he now considers him a companion. This act drives Tamiya to make an extreme decision. He gouges out one of his eyes to sharpen his senses, and finally manages to perceive Tao clearly. Although he succeeds in saving Fuchi, the fight is far from over, and both will have to surpass their limits if they hope to defeat an enemy who remains almost completely unharmed. The story presents a flashback of Tamiya in his youth, when he dreamed of becoming the greatest swordsman in a peaceful country. His ambition was to defeat the strongest warriors and leave his name in history. However, his greatest flaw was relying solely on physical strength. His master warned him that the day would come when brute force would not be enough to overcome opponents with superior technical mastery. That lesson becomes reality when he faces Tao-fa, an enemy who cannot be defeated through physical power alone. Finally, understanding his master's teachings, Tamiya refines his vision of the Tao and manages to evade all of his opponent's attacks. Nevertheless, the situation is critical as he's rapidly losing blood. Even though he can see the Tao, he will not endure if the fight drags on. At that moment, Fuchi steps in with a decisive strategy. Thanks to his mastery over iron, he attempts to channel this element near the Tensen to block its regenerative abilities. Aware of his companion's move, Tamiya must strike with extreme precision to avoid injuring him. Their coordination proves essential, and after a combined effort, they succeed in defeating Tao Fa. However, the threat does not end there. Tao Fa changes form and calls for Ju Fa's help. The Tenzin decide to unite, revealing that together they are far more powerful. Another flashback explains that Ju Fa and Tao Fa were created at the same time and always shared a special bond. Unlike his indifference toward their other immortal siblings, Ju Fa felt genuine attachment to Tao Fa. Mei explained to them that this feeling was love, something incomprehensible to immortal beings. Forced by Rien to perfect their Tao, the island became infertile, and the Tenzin began consuming human energy to survive. Although Tao Fa hesitated at first, both ultimately accepted their cruel fate. In the present, the fusion of the two Tenzin gives rise to a monster capable of releasing spores that drive humans insane. Chobei attempts to confront it with his metallic ability, but he's overwhelmed by the enemy's speed. At a disadvantage, Tamiya and Chobei set aside their differences and join forces. Meanwhile, Shugen approaches the Tenzin's lair, discovers the deaths of more comrades, and uses a mysterious whistle to control the island's creatures, determined to accomplish his objective at any cost. During the battle, Aza Chobei proves to be the only one capable of confronting the monster directly. Although Azatoma and Fuchi try to help, they still do not fully master Tao. Because of this, Chobei believes the best option is to continue fighting on his own, especially since his main priority is protecting his brother, the only family he has left. The situation changes when Toma and Fuchi decide to coordinate by holding hands to attack. In doing so, Fuchi can transfer his elemental energy to Toma, combining metal and earth to create far more powerful attacks against the Tenzin. Realizing he cannot do everything alone, Chobei proposes splitting into two groups. While Toma and Fuchi focus on cutting the monster's main roots, Chobei and Tamiya Gantetsusai will search for its weak point. Even Tamiya agrees to cooperate, showing that the group is finally beginning to work together. However, the monster manages to avoid their attacks and counterattacks violently, severely injuring Tamiya and sending Chobei flying. Toma is also wounded while trying to protect Fuchi. Despite his injuries, Tamiya gathers his remaining strength and unleashes a powerful strike that cuts the monster in half. Before it can regenerate, Chobei, Toma, and Fuchi manage to separate the two Tenzin, finally destroying Tao Fa. In her final moments, Fuchi embraces her so she will not die alone. Even so, the battle continues against Ju Fa. Cornered, Chobei uses a secret ability, a powerful liquor from Rien's laboratory capable of dissolving anything. The attack weakens the Tenzin, but Chobei, consumed by rage, begins torturing him until Tamiya decides to end his suffering with a final blow. Meanwhile, Sagiri and Mei reach the chamber of the Elixir of Life, where they encounter the Tenzin Ju Fa, who guards talismans that allow Rien to predict her enemy's movements. There, Rien's terrible plan is revealed, to use the humans of Japan as a source of Tao to create the Elixir of Immortality. At the same time, Yamada Asaemon Shion continues his intense battle against Ju Jin. Throughout the fight, Shion has managed to defeat him several times, but each regeneration consumes part of his life force, causing Ju Jin to weaken gradually. Determined not only to survive and escape the island, but also to avenge his fallen student who died at Ju Jin's hands, Shion prepares to launch his final attack, taking advantage of his enemy's weakening state. After this, we see a brief flashback in which Shion remembers Tenza, especially his time as his disciple with the sword, and the way he lost his life fighting a Tenzin. Back in the present, the battle against Zhu Jin reaches its final stage, where both fighters are at their limits, and endurance will decide the outcome. Zhu Jin tries to buy time by using his own dismembered parts as a defense while attempting to regenerate, but Shion quickly adapts and counterattacks, seriously injuring him. The Tenzin responds by trapping him in a mass of flesh and bones, although Shion manages to break free and cut him in half. Even so, Zhu Jin fully regenerates by concentrating his Tao into a single form, and even activates a demonic awakening that restores part of his power. In the middle of the fight, Shion's past is revealed. He was blind since childhood and survived by performing shows with his mother, which caught the attention of the Yamada clan, who eventually took him in. Although his story was based on a lie, it was his disciples who gave him a true purpose, to protect them and keep moving forward. Returning to the battle, Shion refuses to give up and takes advantage of the fact that Zhu Jin has not yet fully recovered his Tao to repeatedly dismember him. Knowing the Tenzin's weak point, he manages to pierce the ovule located in his navel, leaving him on the verge of defeat, although Shion himself is left without strength. As both reach their limits, Nurugai tries to intervene, but Shion orders her to flee so he won't lose anyone else. However, after remembering her grandfather and Tenza, Nurugai decides to return to help him, sharing her Tao by embracing him. Through this, she also makes him understand that Tenza died with a smile and would not want his master to sacrifice himself for revenge. These words deeply affect Shion, who lets go of his desire for revenge and decides to withdraw alongside Nurugai, now considering her his disciple. Meanwhile, Yamada Asaemon's Sagiri continues trying to form an alliance to prevent further deaths, which is urgent considering that Gabimaru is on the verge of death.